Welcome back to the IDP Heatseekers Fantasy Football Podcast Show. All the magic, all the wonder and amazement wrapped up in 1 hour of IDP goodness. As you can see, we are down a man at the moment. Kraig will be joining us momentarily as the hamster wheel gets turning and things get fired up in his world. But we tonight are going to be talking about second-year player breakouts in IDP. It's going to be a fun one because we're going to help you guys find some potential steals or guys to maybe target and trade if you're looking for cheap acquisitions that maybe have a chance to pop this year or chance to develop. As always, we thank you guys for hanging out with us and checking out the show. If you enjoy the content you're seeing here on YouTube, like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. Don't forget, in podcast format, leave a rating and review. We do appreciate you telling the algorithm that you love our stuff. With that being said, I am joined, as always, by one of the two most amazing men that join me on Monday nights. Austin, how are you, my friend? How is the world treating you on a Monday night?
It's excellent. How many men do you have visit you on a Monday night?
Just two. The other one is now going to be joining me here. We are also joined by our main man. It is Jurassic Park week, so we are excited that Kraig takes a few moments out of his giddy enjoyment and excitement to talk second-year breakouts with us. I see he's rocking his awesome Jurassic Park themed shirt for the night. Mr. Reith, how are you tonight, my friend?
It's been a... You even hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
it's been a...
In my headphones. It's been a day. Busy baseball practice game tomorrow, and then people not wanting to go to bed, and it sounded like a herd of elephants up above me. So, but I'm here and ready to talk about some second-year potential breakouts. Hope you guys are having a great Monday as well.
It is enjoyable as we get to summer vacation, you know, and we're all parents here on the show. We all have kiddos running around. Summer vacation is definitely an interesting transition away from the regimented schedule. You know, we in my house, we set our kids bedtime and we tell them, you know, about 9 o'clock, as long as everybody's not thunderdoming upstairs or anywhere in the house, you can stay up a little later if you're just hanging out and everybody's being cool. And then the meltdowns start happening and they're running around and getting crazy. And it's like, okay, well, obviously that is not the case. Y'all need to go to bed now, you know? But yeah, we're in the same boat. You know, you guys are doing baseball. I got volleyball practices and camps and tryouts and, you know, horseback training and dance and gymnastics and all sorts of wonderful goodness. But that is not what we're talking about tonight, albeit we do enjoy talking about our families. We are going to be talking about IDP football tonight. We're going to be talking about second-year breakouts, guys that we think are going to pop or potentially pop or have a potential to give you some added value for your IDP rosters. Because you know what? Sometimes this time of year, we got to look for some gems and some steals before we get to training camp and guys' names start flying and getting all excited. And we have a lot. We have probably about, 8 or 10 names of guys we want to talk about tonight. So with that being said, we're just going to run directly down the list tonight. So if you guys have questions, throw them in the chat. You know, we'll take care of you. We'll get to them here in a little bit. We're going to start with Talanoa Hufanga, safety from the 49ers. And I apologize if any of his family or friends hear that and I said his name wrong. It's not me. I didn't do it. Kraig, I'm going to start with you, seeing as you were the last man in. Tell us what you think about him, what you like about him. I know he did produce a little last year. I think PFF had him ranked as like the 48th ranked safety overall, you know, which was like second best on his team. But how do you feel about him, and what do you think about his potential?
So what I like is that he is going to have opportunity. From everything that I can tell, Jimmy Ward is entrenched as one of the starters there, and that defense and that other spot is just wide open. So they did sign George Odom from the Colts, but he's a guy that makes his money on special teams. He was one of the top graded PFF special teams players last year, period, on a very good Colts special teams. And he also has, I think, 9 starts in 4 years with the Colts. So, you know, he doesn't play a whole lot on defense, and he's signed for less than $4 million a year for 3 years. Fonga's a guy that had been heralded a bit more coming out of USC, but he had some health issues. He showed well last year, like you said, Brad, and he even, you know, filled in closer to the box perhaps than maybe he would need to because of all the injuries that they had at the linebacking core for the 49ers last year. But it's really him and Odom at safety that are competing. You know, they have Tarvarius Moore, who's a 2018 third-round pick that hasn't shown much at all. Funga's a physical guy. He's smart. He knows where to be. He knows how to hit. And he just puts himself in good place for that little time that he played last year. So on what is probably a veteran team, I like his chances of starting And, he's not going to be a DB1, a DB2 for you. But if we're talking about actually having a chance to break out and have a big stat line for the year, he only had 32 tackles combined last year, tackle for a loss and 2 pass deflections. He didn't do much. It happens with rookies all the time.
Right.
But I think he's going to have that opportunity.
Well, and I did pull up PFF just to make sure I wasn't saying anything incorrectly. So on the team, Jimmy Ward was ranked 16 out of 92 possible safeties last year. George Odom was ranked 50th, and Hufanga was ranked 48th. So he did grade out higher. And when you look at kind of the breakdown of the grades, he had plenty of snaps. I mean, the guy had over 600 snaps last year on defense, and he graded out best against the run, obviously, because like you said, dude was in the box quite a bit and has that potential. So that's good for tackle heavy, right? I mean, he's going to be up there close in the line, potentially getting you tackles. So I think the potential's there, and the team liked him enough to take him higher than I think most thought they were going to in the draft last year. Austin, what do you think about him?
Yeah, I think Hufanga, he's a pretty rangy guy, but the thing that I like the most about him and the thing that I look for in the safeties that I try to get for fantasy, especially in IDP, is just I try to get the guys that are able to come up and make the tackle, play in the box, be diverse, be moved all over the formation, and really get meaningful plays in. And that's something that I think that Hufanga is going to be able to do a little bit more this year. Is he's just going to have better access to more meaningful plays. And I think opportunity being king in fantasy is going to create a great opportunity for him. I'm looking forward to watching him play this year, and I would definitely be acquiring him on the cheap and stashing him away if I've got a deep enough roster to do that, or just, taking a chance on the guy. I really think he's going to have an opportunity to break out, and I think that's one of the reasons we put him on this list.
Absolutely. Nailed it. He is definitely on this list because we think he has potential. I would agree with you 100%, brother. Okay, so one down. Next one up, Andre Cisco, safety from the Jacksonville Jaguars. This one will be interesting to talk about because obviously this is one of those teams where coaching staff changed over. So they bring in Doug Peterson. They bring in he tends to be more of a 4-3 kind of defensive schemed coach. Mike Caldwell's running the defense, and from what I've seen, he tends to traditionally stick around that 4-3 base. But obviously, we know most teams anymore are sitting in dimes and nickels and things like that. And he has competition. So Cisco last year graded out, at like a 67.9 in PFF, and Andrew Wingard came over and is a guy that is going to be competing with him at that position. And it looks like Rayshawn Jenkins is the other starting safety potentially. So Austin, I'll start with you and go to Kraig on this one. What do you think about a guy like Cisco and what his potential chances are this year to really kind of boom and bust? And do you like him more than a guy like Hufanga? As we talk through this list, who do you like more is a question we should be answering as well.
Yeah, so I wish Cisco would have got more opportunities than he did last year. He's still got the same guys kind of in the way of his playing time with Andrew Wingard and Rayshawn Jenkins. I would love to see him paired with Rayshawn Jenkins. I think that he would be a really good, strong safety just from the way that he's able to move up in the box and play, make tackles. Like, he's a big play guy. He gets a lot. He knows where to be in position to make a play on the ball. He's aggressive to the ball. He's just a player that last year I actually drafted quite heavily and stored him in my taxi squad everywhere I could, just like knowing this guy is probably going to have a year or two breakout. Just being able to watch his college tape and see what he was doing, it was like he looked very promising to me. So I'm really hoping this coaching change helps the trajectory of his career kind of change. Hopefully he'll get a better opportunity, because I'm telling you, man, he's a talented guy, and I would love to see him just get that opportunity in year 2.
Mr. Reith.
Yes. So interestingly, he's a guy that I liked pre-draft. If you watch our pre-draft stuff last year a lot, guy is a complete ball hawk at the safety position as far as when he played in college. He had 14 pass deflections and 13 interceptions in 24 games at Syracuse. And he also, showed a little bit of that in the limited playing time that he had last year. He played in 17 games. He didn't have a huge snap count, but he had 2 pass deflections and 2 forced fumbles. He's on a young team. He's going to get opportunity, I think, and you're going to hear different variations of this sort of thing throughout the night. But with OTAs here, you're getting some of this playing time for these younger guys, hopefully being out there. And Doug Peterson's actually talking him up quite a bit, which is great to see, to Brad's point, when this isn't the coaching staff that brought him in initially through the draft, to have the coaching staff calling him out, saying how well he's doing as far as communicating, flying around. That's the stuff that you want to hear this time of year. If the player's not being mentioned or you hear stuff that you don't like, it's a huge red flag. So is it coach speak? Yeah, probably. But at the same time, if he's going out his way to mention them, that's only going to be a good thing for him at this point and getting that opportunity even in practice. In the league that Brad and I are in, and it's a crazy league because there are not positions. You can start anyone on defense for a one-pick swap. So to move from pick 11 back to pick 12 in the first round of this draft, I got Andre Cisco and then Joseph Asai. So, for me, there's not a huge big difference in super flex leagues at the back end of that first round. Cisco's a guy that I really liked. Osai didn't like as much. But still, two young defenders that kind of got forgotten about for various reasons after year one, to get them in a one-pick swap back in a league that has nice defensive scoring, but it's just all over the board what you can do. I'll take that anytime. So, yeah, I still believe in him, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity that he gets.
Opportunity is all that matters, right? If the guy has potential and he gets that opportunity, then the sky's the limit with him. So the next guy I want to talk about is interesting to me because depending on where you look and as we talk about him, I want your guys' opinion if this hurts or helps his value. But Richie Grant, safety, slot cornerback, he's a little bit of both for the Atlanta Falcons. So in the offseason, they acquired Dean Marlowe, who was a guy from Detroit who's kind of been a journeyman, but he's a safety that knows the scheme and things like that, to go with Eric Harris, and then they have Richie Grant and Jalen Hawkins behind him. Unfortunately, I don't know how long it'll take for both these guys, but I like both the guys in the back more than the starters at this point. But depending on where you look, if you look at like PFFs of the world, they have him listed as a potential slot corner in this defense. And I don't know how much I like that. I think I like it, but I don't know if I like it. So I want you guys' opinion, because this is a player that last year I liked a lot coming into the league. And now, I still have him on a few taxi squads. Nobody's really been biting it to trade for him because there's a lot of uncertainty in Atlanta. Kraig, I'm going to start with you. What do you think about Grant, and how do you feel about him if he's used in multiple positions? Does that give him the chance to maybe be on the field more, or what do you see doing to his value if he plays corner and safety or somewhere in between?
So to that point, defensive coordinator John Hope, can you hear me or no?
Yeah, no, you said point, so I was pointing.
Gotcha. John Hope said they are planning on using him at safety this year. They're not planning on continuing to use him at slot corner. That's one of the things that came out, plug article because it was on The Athletic, but talking about just the Falcons in general, and talked about Grady Jarrett on there too. And so the plan is for him to be at safety. That said, if you're going to end up starting and he's going to have cornerback eligibility for you in a league where you have to have a cornerback, it'll be a cheat code for a year. I don't think you're going to end up maintaining that value beyond a year. And we know some sites change that stuff in season, some change it the next year. So just be aware of that. I liked him a lot too. He's another one of our fan favorites for both of us going into last year. He didn't play a lot last year. He played less than 25% of the defensive snaps, but to your point, 192 of his 276 defensive snaps were at slot corner, which is a ton. He had 10 snaps at safety, period, last year. And he admitted, hey, there's a big learning curve. He had to learn behind some guys like Harris and Marlowe. I would really look forward to a Grant and Hawkins combo too. Hawkins actually showed better of the two last year, and I think he has a lot of long-term promise. There's an article over at rotoheat.com. You can find that I think I have out about Jalen Hawkins, or it's coming
Shameless
out this
plug.
week. One or the other. The one thing that kind of scares me about him, and this is just the dynasty brain, when you're talking about these guys, like Cisco, he's going to be 22 this year. Fonga is going to be 22 this year. Richie Grant is going to be 25 this season in his second year in the league. He's going to be by far the oldest of these second-year guys we're talking about. Is that a death knell for someone? Certainly not. But when you're talking about that, not for long type of league, the younger guys that are going to have more opportunity to grow yet are probably going to be given more chances the longer their career goes on, just because age is still on their side. Whereas if Grant hasn't shown much at the end of this, 4 years, this will be year 2, he probably isn't going to be anything in the league or get a whole lot, because it'd be what he's going to be then 27 at the end of his first contract. So for Dynasty, Does it really matter? No, but that stuck out to me when I was looking at the ages of these. Like, wow, second year he's going to be 25, and we know that gets blown up on the offensive side. So I think it's worth mentioning. But I'm hopeful for him. But man, that first year out of all these guys, he had one of the worst. So
yeah, it was rough to watch, unfortunately. Austin, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Kraig really nailed every single point. With him being 25, it is concerning anytime you're running dynasty leagues and you're trying to acquire talent and things like that, especially when you think you're getting somebody young. You don't realize that if he's a fifth-year senior, then, he's going to be a little older. And so, but watching Richie Grant in college, I was another fan favorite of his, just like you guys were. I mean, I loved how fast he played. He was another guy that took an aggressive approach to the football, was a ball hawk, made a lot of big plays. And then you saw him, he was a more than willing tackler. He was aggressive tackler. When he hit somebody, they were going to feel it. So that was one of my favorite parts about his game. And that's something that I love to see because, that kind of aggressiveness, it transitions to the NFL. You know what I mean? And so he's got the size, and I thought he really had all the intangibles. But yeah, it's just one of those deals like he mentioned, Kraig, I think, mentioned that, hey, he admitted that there was a learning curve. That's the one thing that we can't really see on tape. You know what I mean? Like, to us, yep, you look like you're in position, you look like you know where you're going, but do you really all the time? And NFL is a different game. It's more complex. But hopefully he'll get the opportunity this year. I'm glad that they're moving him back out of slot corner. Maybe that was one of those deals where the Falcons thought our defense is terrible. All the best field that we can get. And
they thought correctly.
Yeah. So get the kid on the field any way they can, because he did stand out in practicing places I would have expected that based on what I saw on the film. I would have expected that he would find a way on the field one way or the other, but I'm glad to see that he'll be used correctly this year, because that's going to be important for him for sure.
So it's safe to say in college he spared no expense to get to the ball carrier, right?
No,
it's a stretch. The other thing too, just with that learning curve at the end, though, I mean, sometimes we forget about these guys. Like we talked about here. Andre Sisco played at Syracuse, which isn't a powerhouse, but he played against a lot of other really good teams. Safanga at USC. Richie Grant was at Central Florida, so that learning curve or that competition is probably greater for him even than what he had been used to when he put up that great college career.
Well, and he's also, and it's not exactly. He's playing for a defensive coordinator who has been doing it for a long time. So his defense is a little bit more complex. That when you talk about the terminology of the defense, Dean Pease has some different terminology, at least from what I've read. Obviously, I'm not in the league, so what do I know? But sometimes that's harder for young guys to pick up kind of the nuances in some of those things, and it just takes a little bit of time. And the thing that we liked about him going into it was, the athletic profile, the willingness to go in the box and really, put his head down, not necessarily literally, but put his head down and really work hard to rack up the tackles and be a playmaker, all that stuff. So none of that really changes. It's just how quickly can he pick up the nuances of the defense and pick up what they're asking for him at his position, especially with the way they kind of used him last year. That's a lot for a rookie to try to do. So hopefully year two, we see some progression. He may not be, in this list, he's probably not the biggest boom potential second-year player. But if he can take the next step, then you really begin to see, okay, there's some potential with this kid. So definitely a guy we like.
I have to correct myself. I gave someone a promotion that I'm not able to give him. John Hoke is the secondary coach of the Falcons. It wasn't the defensive coordinator I spoke earlier. But he's still coaching them daily. So at the point still of what they're planning to do with him likely stands.
Right. Very true. Speaking of standing, let's stand for nothing. I don't know. I got nothing on that one. I really never go. Next, we're going Pete Warner, linebacker of the Saints, though. He is currently standing as the top linebacker in the Saints defense, with the likes of, like Zach Bond and.
Oh, does he, Brad?
What's that?
Does he stand as their top linebacker?
I mean, well, if you look at his PFF grades, he grades out as their top linebacker. I mean, currently on the roster, he graded out higher than Demario Davis last year.
Yeah,
and definitely higher than Zach Bond.
You might have scored better at PFF than Zach Bond, unfortunately, who I liked a lot pre-draft, but he's not going to make one of these shows anytime soon with the way that's gone.
Well, and the way that defense runs, I don't know that. I mean, outside of their top two linebackers, I don't know that we see a lot of fantasy value. I mean, that's a conversation for another show, obviously.
Yeah.
But the top two linebackers are really all that I'm interested in the Saints defense. Warner graded out well, but he's another one of those guys that grades better against the run than against the pass. So I don't know that I'm expecting him to make a lot of plays on the ball and getting interceptions, things like that. Maybe you get lucky, get a couple pass deflections or something like that. But this guy is more tackle. In my mind, if you're looking at him, he's looking for lots of tackles, getting behind the line, maybe getting some sacks or some TFLs, things like that. But Austin, what do you think about a guy like Pete Werner this year?
Yeah, I think Pete Werner looks like he's going to be the starter right next to Demario Davis again this year, and should, with increased time on the field, I mean, he should get the opportunity to be another breakout player. The way he played last year when he did get the opportunities, like you said, he was really excellent tackler, made a lot of good plays there. Didn't really do much in coverage that was too impressive. I mean, I think he kind of started off hot, but then fizzled off at the end of the year. So he has the ability to play in coverage, I think, certainly more than Demario Davis would. If I was going to put one in coverage, it would probably be Warner, just because of youth, and he's a little more agile than Demario Davis. But yeah, he does a lot of things really well. I mean, he can go sideline to sideline. He could create pressure up the middle. So there's a lot of things that Pete Werner does pretty well. I mean, he's not an elite guy. He's not a guy that I would tackle or that I would target as my, linebacker 1 or linebacker 2 necessarily even, but definitely a guy that, if I'm in a deep enough league where I can stash him and acquire him on the cheap, where guys haven't really noticed that, oh, hey, this guy's going to become the starter, go ahead and throw him on your roster and see if you could cash in on it. Because, I mean, there's a pretty good opportunity for him.
Mr. Kraig, what do you think about him?
Yeah, he was third in snaps last year, behind Davis and now Jet, I think, Quan Alexander. So he is probably going to be that second linebacker because they have the unfortunate, so far in the NFL, Zach Bond, Caden Ellis, who's been on the team for a while, who's a 7th-round pick, Eric Wilson, who's now bounced around since he had that good year in Minnesota, and then rookie DeMarco Jackson sort of as their linebacker. So I don't really see anyone probably taking that other spot from them. The bad news with this is that I think Demario Davis is probably sticking around this year and next year. When you look at that contract that they gave him, he's got almost $17 million and then $12 million in dead cap if they were to get rid of him the next 2 years. It's a lot of money to eat for the Saints. And I know they love to do their fidgeting and try to find cap space in creative ways because say the cap doesn't exist. But either way, that's a lot of money for a guy that's going to be in his mid-30s here. So that may put a damper on it. But I agree with Brad. If you're looking in a tackle-heavy league, I think he's a great guy to target. He's not going to get you a whole lot. I mean, college is a different beast, of course, but he only had 16 tackles for a loss in 4 years, 4 sacks, and 13 pass deflections. So he might get you a couple of these here and there, but tackles are going to be mainly where he gets his scoring. So if you're in a balanced league, give that some consideration. In a big play scoring type of league, he probably doesn't have as much value for you.
Well, what do you think if we're thinking about, kind of expectations for stats this year? What are you thinking? 60, 70 tackles, solos, maybe more? I mean, when you think assists, what are we getting, around 100?
Combined, I think he can easily get to 100 because, I mean, he played in 15 games. He started 8 last year, and I think he had 62 combined with 36 solo. So if you bump that up to like 60 and 40, I could certainly see that if he's starting probably not even 17 games because not many players do. But if you peg him in for starting all 15 games and getting even that 70%-ish or more snap share on that defense, that the defensive line is still in flux. I don't really think they're completely sure who they like there with all those spots. It's Cam Jordan, and is it Peyton Turner, or is it Davenport? And they got a lot of weird stuff going on there. But they want to contend, clearly, the way they're trying to load up the weapons for Jameis for a playoff spot. So I think the defense is going to be on the field.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and that's kind of my thought with him. If your expectation is somewhere around 100 combined, and then he sprinkles in something else, then it's just a little extra sweetness on top of that cake. So that's the expectation there. And at least for my mind, that was kind of what I was thinking as I was looking at him and his production. And honestly, of all the linebackers on this list, I think he's the one you have to target if you're looking for somebody as depth that you feel confident you can trust in. So some of the other guys we're going to talk about have potential, but this guy we're pretty sure is going to at least get you something like that. Next up on the list is the linebacker that's near and dear to Kraig's heart with his favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys, Jabril Cox. So it looks like he's probably slated to be one of their starters, probably the Sam, I would guess, from what I've been reading and seeing. Kraig, I'll let you start with this thing. This is your team. What do you think about Jabril Cox? I know he's got a lot going on there with sitting next to Micah Parsons and Van Der Esch, but what's your thoughts on him?
So they only played really 2 linebackers at one time consistently throughout the course of last year because they played 3 safeties a lot. They had more defensive linemen. Of course, they moved Parsons around. You have a very different linebacking core than the complete mess that they had last year. They have Parsons, of course. They got Van Der Esch, who they brought back on a 1-year deal. That's only $1.25 million, so I don't think he's even guaranteed to start. Then they got Damon Clark, who health question marks. Devin Harper, another rookie, and then Luke Gifford, who was a 2019 UDFA. Gifford had 32 defensive snaps last year, and Cox had 9. So one of them is going to have to step up, I would think, and my money would probably be on Cox, and I think he really has a good shot to actually start on that defense. He does very well in coverage, which, of course, equates nicely to today's NFL. He had that standout career at, I think it was North Dakota State before going to LSU for 1 year. He's got good size, and again, it's going to be an opportunity thing. Parsons is going to be the guy there, but I think he's going to be sort of used like a Swiss Army knife moving around, and Cox may have that opportunity to be that second linebacker and stay out there for those coverage snaps. So a guy that is free in a lot of leagues right now, if you're in deep leagues, or you can just throw him on your taxi to see how it pans out, I think he's a great guy to stash at this point.
Austin, what's your thoughts on him, my man?
I'm with it. I think I was surprised the Cowboys brought Van Der Esch back, but like you said, they brought him back on the cheap. There's no commitment from their front office to say that this guy has to get a certain amount of snaps or playing time just to justify our spend. So in that case, I really see Jabril Cox being able to push for that starting job this year at the weak side linebacker, and I love the way that he's going to complement Micah Parsons if he's able to get on the field and be able to play. So we do talk about opportunity, but is this guy going to be a good fit? And my assessment would be if he got the opportunity to start next to Micah Parsons in this defense, I think that there would be a noticeable difference that he would make compared to what we see from Van Der Esch, who he's all right, he gets tackles and things, but he's just not very great in coverage. He's slow. He just doesn't impress me. He's very annoying to watch at times. I don't know how you feel, Kraig, being a Dallas fan, but sometimes he's just very frustrating to watch. And I think Jabril Cox could make a refreshing difference. And so I hope that he gets this job. And like you said, looking at what he has to compete with, you're looking at, Luke Gifford. Okay. And Damon Clark, who's not even going to get snaps this year. So, I mean, for me, Jabril Cox, he has a good path to starting time, and he's definitely a guy you should be able to get cheap, if not for free.
For the guy that had been called the next Brian Urlacher, probably by Jerry Jones, it was someone in the organization when they drafted him. Injuries just ruined his career, which was the concern coming out of college, being and are guys really injury prone? I'd take injury prone the way the Supreme Court took pornography. You know it when you see it. If you have to argue about is somebody injury prone, he's not. Keenan Allen, when he had 2 freak injuries his first 2 years, he's not injury prone. Leighton Vander Esch, who just couldn't stand the field, just having these big things over and over and over and over, that's injury prone. Sorry, it sucks, but some guys just have bad luck.
Right. Nope, I agree. And in this defense, the way that they've kind of built this roster, I mean, Parsons is going to have to be used all over. So it really does open up the opportunity for somebody to step up. And I think, either Cox, and obviously we know Clark isn't going to be on the field probably, if at all, this year, but either one of those two would be the guys that I would peg as that next man up. So because of, just the fact that Cox should get the first chance, I'm all in on it. I think he's got the profile. The defensive scheme, it seemed like it shouldn't be that difficult to pick up. I mean, heck, Parsons is a rookie. They were able to move them all over and do all sorts of things. So you got to think they'll be able to figure out ways to use Cox along that middle of the field as a linebacker only. He's not going to have his hand in the dirt ever, but he's definitely an interesting guy and one that I think has potential to boom. But like I said, with Pete Warner, we've seen with Warner that there is some potential there, and we know that he's beginning to produce. This guy we haven't seen enough out of. I don't think. I mean, think he had less than 200 snaps last year on defense, probably less than 150 snaps if I recall.
Cox,
Yeah.
he had 9.
Yeah.
Oh, so
He had-
even less than 100. I was like, I know he wasn't on the field very often. So.
Yeah, he got some on special teams, and I think
he
that
played special teams a bit.
No,
but-
special teams. That's probably where I saw the uptick in snaps. So, so this is a guy that it's all potential, but this is a guy that you should be able to pick up either off your waiver wire or get for cheap if you need some depth at linebacker that you're looking for somebody that can boom, because he has plenty of boom potential.
Yeah, I think the thing we don't know about him that we're going to have to know is how he's going to respond to, like, it seems like the guys on that defense are, like Curse and, some of those guys, they're very vocal leaders, and they're leaders who are looking for more leaders. I mean, the defense was so fun to watch last year, and I'm not even a Cowboys fan. So I think if Jabril Cox responds to that, I think that'll be a really good thing.
Yep, agreed.
And I do want to throw one thing in here. I don't know if you said this at the start of the show, Brad. And if you did, I'm sorry. We're not going over any of these first-round players from last year's draft because, of course, those guys are going to get opportunity up the wazoo. And, it really isn't that much of a reach to say, I think Gregory Rousseau might have a breakout year this year when he showed well last year. He's going to be playing opposite Von Miller, and he's going to be having more playing time. I mean, there isn't a whole lot more to add. So we are going into guys in the second round and beyond. So if you're looking for some first-round guys, we won't be discussing them tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
Good point.
But the next person we will be discussing is Divine Diablo, converted safety to linebacker for the Las Vegas Raiders. This team right now, I mean, it kind of looks like the depth chart is Jayon Brown, who came over from Tennessee, alongside Denzel Perriman, with Chandler Jones and Max Crosby as the outside linebackers. And depending on where I'm seeing it, it looks like they're pegging this to be a 3-4 defense under Josh McDaniel and Patrick Graham, which would make sense because that's what New England ran, and Patrick Graham's history, it looks like he runs plenty of 3-4. So the way that they currently have Diablo, it looks like they've got him kind of in the middle. So he would be kind of the second line with Micah Kaiser as the next man up. At least at this point. Obviously, we haven't seen any live action. We're not even to training camp for another month and a half. So with that all being said, this guy probably is going to take some time to even get an option or some potential to get on the field. Kraig, what do you think about this kid? And do you think there's going to be anything for us this year to really even see out of him other than just training camp and early on?
So the nice thing about all these linebackers, other than Diablo, who was drafted by him, that you mentioned, Perriman, Brown, Kaiser, and Kenny Young was the other one that I saw. They are all super cheap contracts, so they're not heavily invested in any of these guys starting. Perriman's 2 for $6, and then Brown, Kaiser, and Kenny Young are all about $1 to $1.5 million for 1 year. So if he shows out well, they're not going to hesitate to throw him in there and get him playing time. And he did do decently last year. 5 starts in 17 games. He had 45 tackles, pass deflection, fumble recovery, and he did pretty well as far as run defense and pass rushing for a rookie. He did not do well in coverage, which was one of my concerns going back to last year this time. He just didn't have that quickness, those hips to be able to do well in coverage in college, and I didn't think it was going to translate that well. I mean, he's a big dude. He's like 6'3", 226, and he just didn't have that ability. But at a linebacker, I think he has much more potential. He did well last year when he got pressed into it. So I think that opportunity will be there for him. Perriman was a holdover from the last regime. They brought him in, and he just did really well. Brown showed out really well, too, last year when he was healthy. Being healthy has been an issue for him. But, some combination of Perriman, Brown, and Diablo, I think, are going to be your clear top 3 guys. And if you have Diablo, even if he doesn't be the starter this year, hold on to him because the rest of these guys, again, are not going to be around for long, I don't think.
Well, when you look at, he played, 277 snaps in the box, and he graded out very well as a pass rusher and a run defender. At the linebacker position. So, and that was as a rookie who was moving from safety to linebacker. So that's a lot. that speaks volumes. What do you think, Austin?
Yeah, I think he does an incredible job when he's on the field, and I agree. He will be in a three-player rotation, but the Raiders are going to have to find a way to make sure that they get this kid on the field. It's another one of those situations with Richie Grant where he's just got undeniable talent. He does a lot of things really well. You love the diversity, being able to, playing coverage as a safety, but also being able to come up and be a willing tackler in the box, and not only a willing tackler, but an effective tackler. I think that's important too. So they've got ways to keep him on the field just by his skill set alone, and they're definitely going to do that. I think he's a good complement to Jayon Brown. Their game is quite different, and I think that Denzel Perryman's probably going to be that consistent guy that you're going to see on the field anchoring the middle of the defense, and he should be. And he played at a Pro Bowl level last year. Guy who's been in the league for a while, but really came on and has really played well. So if he continues to play well and stays healthy, I see it being a three-way rotation, more so with Divine Diablo and of course Jayon Brown. But if there's any injuries at all, I mean, Diablo slides right in for really almost either one of those guys. He's a little bit smaller than what you would like to see, at middle linebacker, but he's still got the size to stay in there and play. So I think he'd be fine.
All right. So moving on. Speaking of fine, it is fine when I get any chance I can to talk about my Detroit Lions. Next up, we're going to talk Derrick Barnes, second-year linebacker out of Purdue for the Detroit Lions. Right now, who knows, right? They got Anzalone. They brought back Jared Davis. They've got a rookie from Oklahoma State, Malcolm Rodriguez, and then obviously on the outside, guys like Charles Harris and Romeo Carr coming back from injury. And, they got a lot of guys, Sean Deanna Hamilton still walking around in the building. Yeah, Josh Woods, Anthony Pittman. I mean, Detroit's got a lot of linebackers, and this is a team that's very much in transition. They're still trying to rebuild, and linebacker hasn't gotten a lot of early round draft capital. They've gone, day 3 so far in the first 2 drafts. Derrick Barnes is a guy that they loved his potential, his explosiveness, but he's coming very unrefined, and Aaron Glenn is doing the best he can to try to bring him along. And I'm sure this year he gets a chance because, last year what they had just wasn't very good. But I'll start with you, Austin. What do you think about a guy like Derrick Barnes? What do you think about his potential? Is this somebody that you've actively targeted? Have you bought his football jersey? Are you asking for his autograph when you see him? What do you think about him?
Not him. I will say, he's a fine player. Like he's fine. Like kind of what we led into on this guy, but he just doesn't excite me. And I can tell you, his game is really inconsistent. When you just look at how he played last year, when he was able to get in there and get some playing time, he was very inconsistent. He was a pretty good tackler, but outside of that, he wasn't really able to create a consistent presence on the defensive line at all. He really didn't do a great job of getting to the quarterback. He's not very great in coverage. He's sort of limited, and a guy that I've been drafting heavily, and I know I'm probably going to get beat up for this because he went in the 6th round, but I can tell you Malcolm Rodriguez is consistent, and Malcolm Rodriguez could really push this kid for time. Now, do I think that's going to happen? Probably not. So since we're talking about Derrick Barnes, for me, he's got potential to break out, of course, because he's got, better draft capital. He's a little bigger. One of the concerns with Rodriguez is his size, and obviously Derrick Barnes has that. With his size, you would think he would be able to do more off the edge, create more of a pass rush presence, but they've got to find ways to get him in there and do those things, whether it's just giving him, maybe he didn't get the opportunity to do them as much. I'm not sure, but they're going to have to find a way to make this kid be effective because he is talented, he is skilled, and I think if he gets the right opportunities and gets used the right way, then maybe he could show out, but he's going to have to improve his inconsistency. That's the number one thing I see with him.
Yeah, Rodriguez is an interesting guy. I mean, I've listened to some profiles on him, and one of the podcasts, one of the Lions podcasts I follow, brought on some local Oklahoma State, reporters to talk about him. And dude seems super smart, and as a guy who was a big Stephen Tulloch fan when he was in Detroit and Tennessee, undersized linebackers can still be a thing in the NFL, which is why I'm a Nakobe Dean fan as well. If you're smart enough and can handle, overcoming some of that adversity, and you have that work ethic, you can be successful at the next level. So if Rodriguez really does have, and it sounds like he has the smarts. I mean, he came in as a converted quarterback, went to safety, then moved up to linebacker and played for OK State, basically from a rookie on, it sounded like, and he was pushed into action, but he provided strong against the run. He was a sure tackler, and he stayed healthy. I mean, as a guy who was undersized, as they kept calling him, I mean, the dude he takes care of himself well. And that'll show. I mean, Dan Campbell loves them football guys. So if this kid really does eat, sleep, and dream about football, and he really does bring it, there'll be a spot for him. But Barnes is still a guy I think has the athletic profile that if they can help develop some of those other areas of his game, the consistency that you spoke of, then he'll have the chance. I mean, because right now, all he's really got to do is beat out Anzalone and Jared Davis, and Jared Davis is now in his second tenure with Detroit, and all he really is a pass rush specialist. So, Greg, what do you think about him?
I just want to say I think this is the third show in a row where Brad's brought up Stephen Tulloch, and he hasn't played in the league since 2016 and Lions since 2015. So that just tells you the state of the Lions, that Brad's pining for 7 years ago when Stephen Tulloch was still a Lion.
I follow him on Instagram. That's how much I like him. He's a good dude.
Take whatever guy that you like out of this group. I mean, who really knows? Barnes is, I think, the best draft capital out of the guys that have been drafted by and stayed with the team. Which again doesn't say much. He was a 4th-round pick a year ago. It doesn't say much of anything. But I think he's going to still get opportunity. He had a couple good showings there. There really isn't a whole lot else at it. It's wide open. It's to the point, Brad, where they're giving Julian Aquara reps at inside linebacker too. They said I saw that today. I'm like, you guys have no clue what you're doing if you're trying to move him all around on the linebacking core.
Well, yeah, I mean they're trying to, in their mind, we're putting the best players out that can handle the position, and we'll just see where it goes. They've been rebuilding through the trenches, through the outside of receiver where they need some receiver help. I mean, linebacker has not been critical enough at a high draft position yet, and I expect them to go looking at linebackers unless some of these young guys they have can develop. But next year I would expect a 1st or 2nd round linebacker.
I love it from a real life NFL point of view. For fantasy, I just want nothing to do with it unless you're stashing someone on a taxi squad or getting them for free once they start showing out. There's no reason to invest in this group right now.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. From a fantasy perspective, I have no Lions shares in the linebacker group at this point. And I think my last linebacker share I had was a Jared Davis share back when he first was drafted by us. So next up, we're going to talk about a guy that I do have some shares of because I do like this player a lot. Baron Browning, linebacker with the Denver Broncos. He got some snaps last year. They played him pretty much played mostly in the box for Denver. But at this point, it looks like he's not necessarily a starter, but he could be a starter. I mean, he's going against, guys like Josie Jewell, Alex Singleton. I mean, it's not like the who's who. Randy Gregory came over from Dallas. Malik Reed is there. He has potential to step up and take a position next to Bradley Chubb or across from Bradley Chubb. But I don't know. I just don't know what Denver's going to do there yet because Denver, I never trust their defense. Like, it's so hard to trust what they do back there. Austin, what do you make of this linebacker group, and then what are you doing with Baron Browning?
Well, I have Baron Browning in some leagues, and I'm holding him. I'm certainly not moving him. Like you mentioned, there's a lot going on in this defense, especially with the addition of Randy Gregory, who they're going to use in some form, probably off the edge. You're going to probably see more of just like 2 linebackers in the box rather than having 3 on the field. So they're probably going to see more of that this year. I don't know. I mean, Baron Browning, I could see him sliding in and being able to get some meaningful snaps in there on the defense. I'm hoping that he can. He's got the talent to. And really, the thing about it is, it's like, for me, Alex Singleton, I mean, he actually did play pretty well in Philadelphia, of course, but Alex Singleton's, he's kind of getting up there in age, I'm pretty sure. And Josie Jewell, obviously, he had the injury last year, limited his ability to play. I think he missed most, if not all, of the regular season. So we'll see how he's able to come back from that and see what he's able to do. But yeah, other than that, I mean, it's just pretty blah at linebacker. So I think, in that regard, he could have an opportunity if, injury or something else happens, maybe he just plays his way into a spot. I mean, that's not totally out of the question, I wouldn't say, looking at who's in front of him. So he's a guy that I'm probably hanging on to. I wouldn't invest heavily in. Obviously, I wouldn't trade an asset that I know is productive right now for him. But if it's something where, something that's very recoverable, in your leagues, depending on what your league format is. If you're trading away something that's very recoverable, I would consider doing that, especially if it's for a cheap price.
Mr. Reith.
So I was a fan, and then I started looking at how they seem to be thinking they want to use him this year, and I got discouraged. So far, they're using him as an edge player in camp, to the point where the coach said, Barron, this is a quote now from Nathaniel Hackett, the new head coach. Barron, he did a great job at outside backer this past camp. I think he's going to grow there. You can never have enough people to rush a passer. Point one, I agree. That's true. You never can have enough. Two, if that's how they're going to use him this year for fantasy, it stinks, because I don't think he's going to start. Like Brad said, they signed Gregory to a lot of money from Dallas. They have Bradley Chubb, who's still going to start. I mean, they're paying him big money after being the 5th overall pick 5 years ago, something like that. Last year of his rookie deal, they're going to see what they have in him. Do they want to potentially re-sign him? Malik Reed, who's been a nice situational pass rusher, he's back on a 1-year deal. Jonathan Cooper, another Ohio State guy, actually from the same draft, showed well in spot starting there last year, and they're going to keep him around. He's a special teams player. So it kind of feels like they're trying to utilize that athleticism that Browning had in just barrels at Ohio State, but he never really capitalized on it there, and they're sort of hoping maybe if they put him there, he can capitalize on it more. And, he did all right PFF grade-wise for pass rushing and coverage for a rookie. He's got good size. It just seems like now they're saying, well, we don't know what we want to do with him. Let's try him somewhere else, which, again, that can be great for your team to have that flexibility and all that. And maybe this is just a camp thing, but it's come up more than once. And if you hear that the whole camp, that's how they're using them, for me, at least, it puts a damper on those sort of hopes. Because I was with you guys and that I was thinking, wow, put him on the inside. This is improved defense, improved offense. There's going to be opportunity. And now it's like someone dumping water on you when you're outside trying to have a parade or something. So,
well, you didn't say the magic word. Don't forget about Nick Bonito, the 2nd-round pick from Oklahoma, right?
It's even worse then.
I mean, yeah. So you have more and I was pulling up some articles from OTAs. Evero, the DC there, is talking up Bonito and about how quickly he's picking things up. Also talking up Baron Browning about his transition to the edge. So, continue to throw some more water on that fire that, Browning has potential, but Browning as an edge rusher does not have nearly as much potential as Browning as an inside guy. But that also, you have to be careful, coach speak throughout the offseason. You never know. I mean, They know what they have in the inside linebacker version of Baron Browning, my guess would be. So they're trying him at edge. Cautiously optimistic is the best way that we can put it with a guy like this. If you have room in a deeper IDP, sure, stash him, see what happens. Just don't go getting super excited. I mean, it almost feels like our order of importance, minus the next guy that we want to talk about, is kind of been the way that I would look to grab them. Azeez Ojulari, defensive end, edge rusher from the Giants, is the next guy up. But him and Hufanga and Cisco are probably my 3 guys from the group that we talk about tonight that I would actively target and try to acquire as a depth guys. Or, I mean, in Ojulari's case, I mean, dude had 8 sacks as a rookie. I mean, so it's not like he's not produced. I mean, he's probably got the best production of any of these second-year guys that we're going to talk about tonight. So, Kraig, with a guy like Ojulari, and we'll throw Barmore in because I want to get to a couple questions before we end the show. So these last 2 guys that we want to talk about, what do you think about them? And then are you targeting, and really in looking back at all this, are there guys that you're targeting more than others, or are you just seeing what you can get on waiver wires and ignoring the rest?
I'm going to jump to Barmore because I want to make sure we get to him, because I actually am really excited for his career. When he got that draft capital with the Patriots in the 2nd round, he's the 38th overall pick. He was a raw prospect coming out of Alabama. He didn't produce a lot until his last year. I think it might have been even in the playoffs for Alabama. And then he went, and we know Bill Belichick, generally speaking, does not give rookies a whole lot of playing time, especially on defense. Wasn't the case for him. He played over half of the defensive snaps. He had 46 tackles, 23 solo, 3 tackles for a loss, 2.5 sacks, 3 pass deflections. He's going to be just 23 this year. He's a big dude. He's like 6'4", 310, but he can move. And the fact that he got that much, credit from Belichick, or earned it, probably is a better way of saying it, to play on that Patriots defense and showed out well as a rookie. He's a guy I'm completely targeting if I'm in an offensive line required league. I'm not actually in one of those. If I'm in a defensive
challenge accepted.
Yeah, I played in one once. It wasn't that fun. That was probably 15 years ago, maybe not that long, but the scoring was not good. My point is, if I'm in a defensive tackle required league or in those interior linemen, I'm totally targeting this guy because he didn't blow up by any means, but he has that chance and he's going to be on the field more. He's got all the talent in the world. If he can keep putting it together, I think he's going to be forced in those type of leagues where he could end up having, defensive lineman 3 type value just in straight defensive line leagues potentially. So he's young, he's talented. He had a very nice rookie year, even though the stats weren't great, and he got that playing time, which is huge for young guys, and he's just going to continue to get that. So Barmore, if you're in one of those type of leagues, I would be going out to target him because I think there's a very good chance in those interior lineman defensive tackle leagues, we're talking about him like a top 10 in terms of dynasty value at this time next year.
All right. So Kraig talked about Barmore. Austin, I know you love Ojulari, so end it with that. Let's hear what you have to say about Ojulari and how much you love him.
Well, I'll keep it short. He's really good.
Thanks, guys. We'll see you later.
He had 8.5 sacks, whatever he had last year. He got a ton of playing time, which was great. I thought his landing spot coming out of college was great. I'm glad that he slid in the draft. I'm glad he landed in New York. I love the way that they use him in New York. I think he is a great complement to the pieces that they have there. I mean, when you look at Blake Martinez in the middle and Tay Crowder, who's going to play weak side linebacker again, I thought Tay Crowder did an excellent job last year. Was a guy that I actually picked up in one of my leagues off the waiver wires and kept for the remainder of the year. So, they've got some good defensive linemen that they're adding, obviously bringing in Kayvon Thibodeau. They've got Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams. So there's a lot of really good guys on that defensive line, and the back end isn't too terrible. So Azeez Ojulari should still continue to get to the quarterback, and I see him getting, having good production again on sacks, being able to get more tackles this year, hopefully, and just being a guy that can actually make a difference on your fantasy squads. And I could see him playing even better than he did last year.
I like it. All right. So we got some questions in the chat, and we do appreciate you guys jumping on and throwing some questions out there. We want to get to them. First and foremost, CXK, we love you. Question: any hope for Dylan Moses this year? Currently, as far as I know, he is waived by Jacksonville and still a free agent, which is sad because this was a guy that I really liked, a couple years back. I don't see it happening just because of how many linebackers keep coming in the league every year and just the way the teams are built. I just don't know that there's a place for him at this point. And that's sad because he was really good in college for a spell there. Any other thoughts about him, gentlemen?
No, not really. I mean, kind of along the same lines as you, just, where does he fit in? And how long do we have to wait until we know? So right now he's not on a team. He's certainly not on my fantasy squad. And that's
right.
kind of about where it ends, right?
Yeah, which is unfortunate. He had potential in college, but and that would be an interesting case study about Alabama linebackers. It feels like people get super hyped up about them, and then their production in the NFL always seems to be a little bit kind of all over the place. But
injuries ruined him, I think. I don't think he ever completely made it back at college, even from that injury. And then, other issues came up with it last year. And if he isn't going to make it in Jacksonville with that linebacking core where he went as an undrafted free agent for at least most of last year, I don't have a whole lot of hope. And maybe if he goes to Detroit, he could probably start for them. But besides that,
he's not athletic enough. We want them super athletic linebackers.
Well, you brought back Jared Davis, so there's still hope.
Maybe Tulloch will come back too, right?
Yeah, message him on Instagram. Slide into those DMs, Brad.
Slide into the DMs.
Invite him on
ready
the
to
show.
come back to work? It's time to eat some kneecaps.
That's great.
All right. So there you go, CXK. We do apologize for throwing some water on your fire, but it is what it is. Unfortunately, not everybody can make it in the league. Obviously, none of us did. That's why we're here doing fantasy. All right. Ben Gucci, welcome, my friend. I don't know that I've seen you in the chat before, and I appreciate you jumping on and hanging out with us and the sweet comment. We do appreciate that you think the show is great. We try to do our best to make this fun, entertaining, informational, and all the like. I drafted Deo Odiengo Odeyingbo. I apologize.
Deo
Defensive
Odeyingbo.
end. Yeah, Deo Yingbo. Out of Indy in my IDP startup last year. What do you think of him as a DE? This was a guy that was going to be a little bit of a project anyway. Wasn't he from Vanderbilt, if I remember correctly? And I think right now he's behind Yannick and Kwity Paye is kind of, yeah. So, Kraig, what do you think about him? I think he's definitely got potential.
He was the second round pick, I believe, and I think it surprised a lot of us that he went that high given the knee injury that kept him out, I think, all of last year. Yannick is almost by definition, if you look at what he does, just a pure pass rusher. He is not going to get you tackles at all. So I think the best case scenario for him this year is working into a rotation because Mr. Paye, I think, is going to be that one defensive end, and I think he's probably going to have that lockdown for the most part. And then you're probably going to have Yannick as the pure pass rusher and Deo hopefully working in more as a run defender. He's got great size. I mean, he's a very big dude. And I think that defensive line has a lot of potential long-term with Paye, Dangbo, and then DeForest Buckner, of course, in the middle. And then, whoever else they wanted. They could throw Brad in there probably, and it'd be a fine defensive line for those four. And again, a team that has aspirations to go somewhere this year, it probably makes sense to, be having a bit of a rotation. Most teams are doing that anyway. You're not seeing these guys unless you're Cam Hayward, out there for 90% of the snaps or whatever on defense. So this year, you're probably not going to get a whole lot, except I would suspect part of a rotation. I would call that progress. And then maybe next year, because I think Ngakoue only has a year on his deal, maybe Deo shows up and takes over next year or the year after. But he does certainly have potential and someone that I would stash on a taxi squad if I had room.
And to your point, I'm not very expensive. I'm a veteran presence in the locker room. I have no problem coming and helping these young guys learn the position, learn how to be adults in the NFL.
Not that far of a drive.
It ain't that far a drive. Hour and 40 minutes, I can be down there. Jim Irsay, you've hired crazier people. And he played. I mean, what did he play in 8-9 games last year? Maybe even a little bit more.
If he even played.
Yeah, he played. I know he played at least some snaps, if I remember correctly. I think he played like kind of a quarter of the snaps throughout the last half of the year. He got involved. I know him and Buckner had a sack. They each were part of a sack together at one point. I do remember even seeing that, and people were excited about that the kid got on the field and was getting his feet wet and kind of coming back from the injury. So I think the sky's the limit for him. They liked him a lot. I think he fits in this defense with what they have in that defensive room, with Buckner, with some of those other pieces on the other side from Paye. I mean, Yannick is obviously going to be their pass rushing specialist, but this guy could still see, 40-50% of the snaps and give you some solid production, in year two. I mean, this guy could have been a year two conversation for us. He could have been on this list, and I wouldn't have been surprised at all. I mean, I like him a lot, and I would target him. If you have him already, which you do already, Ben Gucci, I would hold on to him and see what you get. Now, obviously, you can't trust him as a week one starter. If you're expecting him to kind of just blow up immediately, I would temper the expectations just because he's still learning, growing. Year two, it's going to take a little time, but this is a guy that you could trust that they're at least going to keep giving the opportunity to because so far so good. Austin, any other thoughts on him?
Yeah, I mean, by all indications, he should continue to get an opportunity. I could see him being in a 3-man rotation as far as those defensive ends go. And, if you're wanting to have a glass half full future outlook for him, one thing I would say is that Ngakoue seems to bounce around a whole lot lately. He doesn't stay in one place for very long for whatever reason. And maybe, kind of like what Kraig spoke about was like, he's a pass rush specialist. He doesn't really do a whole lot of things great, but he's a pretty effective pass rusher. So if Dio can get in there and make his presence known in more facets than just one, then he may be able to get more snaps and get on the field. But long term, I would keep him. A good chance that Ngakoue moves on, and that's just kind of where we are. And the other thing I would say is it didn't look like the Colts addressed their defensive end position in the draft, so they didn't seem to think that it was a pressing matter for them to be able to, draft another person just in case these guys don't work out. Obviously, if Ngakoue is just a short-term solution, then maybe they would have thought about drafting somebody, but they didn't do that. So that could be a good indicator that maybe they trust him.
Well, and they've spent second round picks in like 3 of the last 4 drafts on, or maybe even every draft on defensive end. They have Ben Bangu, they have Tyquan Lewis to go with Pay and Dio. I mean, they spent a lot of early round draft capital, and they needed to address the receiver position. So it doesn't surprise me. And I don't know that they have much depth behind those guys. I think those are kind of the 4 guys that they're going to be leaning on for the year. And Dio is right there underneath Pay as when it comes to the athletic profile. I mean, this kid can be disruptive. He's got, a nice burst, first step. I mean, all the things they talked about going into the draft. So I would definitely think he's going to get plenty of opportunity. And Yannick, we obviously know is just going to get a lot of those pass rush snaps. So it is what it is. Thank you, Ben. Great question. That's a good one. And we probably should have had him on our list of second-year breakouts. I mean, he's right there. He's right there and deserves to be in that conversation as well. So great question. That's it. We're done. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. We're here every Monday night, short of holidays. We'll be back until the season goes. Once we get to Monday Night Football, then obviously you won't be seeing us, but we'll be doing some other things IDP-wise to help fill in some of that gap so that you guys still get some amazing quality IDP content. As always, we thank you guys. Like, subscribe, hit the notification icon. Hopefully everything goes well for you in your IDP rookie drafts. If they're going on and you need some help, go to rotoheat.com. Our rankings are updated. We update them at the beginning of every month. As long as all of us are getting our heads on straight and getting them done in time, they're done by June 1, and these ones were ready and rocking, so they're out for you. If you need them, rotoheat.com. We got rankings for Devy, offense, defense, superflex. I mean, everything you think of, we got a ranking for, even underdog, best ball. So we got you covered over on rotoheat.com. For Kraig and Austin, we thank you guys as always for hanging out with us. Have fun, be safe, and hopefully Jurassic World's great, or Jurassic Park Dominion, whatever it is.
Jurassic
Hopefully it's amazing.
World Dominion, you know what it is.
Hopefully the Chris Pratt party hour is wonderful, and you guys all enjoy your week. See you.